Howdy, I'm Grey Pilgrim. Time for a history lesson. Back around 1855 or so, a gunsmith who was at the time working for Sam Colt, a fellow named Roland White, came up with a design for a revolver. And that revolver had it used a paper cartridge, and the way it worked is you took the cartridge and stuffed it into the cylinder from the rear. Now remember, Colt at the time was making this, the 1851 Colt Navy. This was his seller to the U.S. Army. I know it's called Navy. It's a 36 caliber. That's why it's called Navy. Also, there's a Navy scene engraved on the cylinder. This one's basically a takeoff on the, I think it's called the London edition, because he had a armory set up in London to make these. It didn't make a go of itself, so he had to shut it down later. But in the meantime, it was an all-steel frame. This one has a brass trigger guard and handle, but the rest of it is all steel. I guess at the very beginning it was twisted iron. Anyway, he took a look at Erskine Allen's design and said, it's because Roland White's design. Erskine Allen, why did he come up? At Roland White's design and said, nah, we'll never make a go of this. He looked at the gun. He didn't look at the whole thing. Well, Roland White had taken out a patent on the thing himself. And among other things, he patented the bored-through cylinder. Well, since Colt wasn't buying, he went over to Smith & Wesson, and they said, hell yeah, we'll buy it. We have a deal with you now. Yes, we'll buy it, and we'll give you a royalty on every one of these we sell. But any challenge to this patent, you bear the burden of pursuing it in court and defending the patent. Well, at the time, Roland White thought it was a great deal. It wasn't. He died in poverty. But because everybody and their brother was copying it. And so he was constantly in and out of court with lawyers to defend the patent. He usually won. And all of those guns, when they were sold, Smith & Wesson was selling with a little moniker on the side of it saying, made for Smith & Wesson. Because part of the deal was you just turn over all of your guns to us, we'll buy them at cost and sell them off ourselves and make money. A great deal for Smith & Wesson, lousy deal for Roland White, and lousy deal for the competitors who tried to steal his patent. Well, what Smith did with it is they first of all came up with a 22. I don't have one, but it's a little tiny 22. It's what today we would call 22 short. But at that time, it was the 22. And that was the only gun they were selling with this bored-through cylinder. It went on to other models, like this is one of them. This is a 2.5. And what's the 2.5? Well, it's a top break, like that. It shoots a 32, I think this one's in 38 short. And it was a good gun. They scaled this one up to make, I think, the Model 3, which was in 44, and that was the one that the U.S. Army bought. They had two different models of it and sold it to the U.S. Army. Well, around 1869, the Roland White patent was running out. And when it ran out, now remember, back then Colt was selling these, and by 1869, they were also selling these. The 1861 Army. This one happens to be a McCullough edition with the fluted cylinders, but it's 1861. Excuse me. Anyway, so Colt was tooled up for these, but the patent ran out and they could now sell bored-through cylinders. So the first thing they did is they sold new lines. And new lines were basically a pocket 22, very much like the original Smith & Wesson, because that was something they could quickly put together and sell. And they did pretty well. And then they worked their way up until they got to, 1872, 1873, and started putting these out. Single Action Army. This one's in 45 long Colt, but they are originally in 4440, 44 Schofield, or others like that. Black powder. And this is an ubiquitous gun that was sold from 1873 till, well, I think the Colt Custom Shop still makes these on order if you want one, though they probably cost a couple of grand. The originals also cost a couple of grand. Well, in the meantime, they had all the tooling set up for this. So what do? You've got all the tooling and half-finished parts to build a bunch of these 1851s and 1861s in 36 and 44. Well, two engineers working for them, but one guy by the name of Richards, developed a system for converting one of these into a bored-through cylinder 38 or 44 caliber revolver. And then Mason did a different patent that basically complemented the Richards patent and worked it out pretty well. Well, that's this. That's what this is really all about. This is a Mason, a Richards Mason bored-through cylinder, open top, with a loading gate, single action, meaning you have to fill the cylinder and cock to fire each shot. And this is a unique gun. Basically, it was designed to make do with all of these parts and sell them off and make guns out of them. Where this thing had the loading, the ramrod underneath the barrel for loading the cartridges in, that was taken off, and instead this ejection rod was put on there to replace it. Very similar to the same ejection rod they used on the later Single Action Army. This came out in 1872. So this one is just on the verge of the 1873, just on the verge of the new and improved Colt design, which Mason and Richards also had a little bit of hand in the design of it. But this is a beautiful old pistol. And notice, by the way, that on both of these, the rear sight is actually part of the hammer. You sight down the hammer to the front sight. There's a little notch in the rear hammer. On this one, there isn't, because the hammer just comes back and it's below the line of sight. So they put this little notch rear sight right here on the barrel itself. It's a slightly longer sight radius, shorter actually, I suppose, and frankly, it's a lousy sight, but it's better than having it on the hammer. Anyway, an interesting design from an early engineer by Colt. Now this one I think is made by, I don't know, it says Cimarron on it, so it's probably a new birdie, but Italian made. I don't have the money for an original. I don't have the money for an original much of anything. Well, I do. I have an original star up there, thanks to my cousin. But other than that, actually, this is from my cousin too. It takes a lot of money to get into this hobby, but because of the Italian replicas, it doesn't take as much money as it used to. And I'm sort of a lower tier collector. I don't have the fancy one-of-a-kind pistols in my collection. I watch the auctions for those, but I don't dare put down money on them. Anyway, just a talk of from this, through this, to this. That's the generations of the Colt and the cheap Smith & Wesson. That's all I got to talk about. Happy trails.